Welcome. My name is Scott, and I am part of the CA Jail Outreach Digital Team, the home of Camp Growth for children who have parents or loved ones in the jail system. Today's podcast is a different type. It was written by a man who was once inside the federal system and is now an integral part of the CA Jail Outreach leadership. He serves within the ministry of the pen to help others find their way toward restoration. Before we dive into the heart of this message, I want to read a short note from our CEO and founder, David Avritt. Hello, JW. I am reminding us of the first podcast you wrote for us, which had over 1,000 views. Your impact was huge. Now, here you are. Your courage, transparency, and commitment to growth are a powerful testimony of God's grace at work. Thank you for using your story to bring hope, healing, and second chances to so many who are hurting. Keep up the good work and keep moving forward. The journey isn't easy, but your faithfulness is making an eternal impact. I'm grateful to have you as part of the CA Jail Outreach family. With appreciation and encouragement, David Avritt, CEO and founder, California Jail Outreach and home of Camp Growth. We have a saying here. Before I turn it over to Steve and Trinity, we don't say goodbye. We say, until the trumpet blows. In the meantime, let's push forward until he comes. God bless you all.
Hello and welcome back to The Deep Dive. I'm Steve.
And I'm Trinity.
Now, before we really get into the weeds today, we should probably do a little housekeeping. We want to properly introduce ourselves to you, specifically about our role here. We aren't just commentators, talking about things from a distance.
Right, that's a good point. We are both proud members of the CA Jail Outreach Digital Community team.
We are. And it really is a privilege to be part of this team and to serve this community.
It absolutely is.
And today, we are welcoming you to a very, very special deep dive titled Growth Journey. Usually you and I are digging into a stack of articles on, tech trends or a new historical finding.
Yeah, some sociological study.
Exactly. But today feels different. It feels heavier, but in a good way.
It does. It feels more grounded, more personal. Today we're focusing entirely on the writings of a man named JW.
And JW is a member of the CA Jail Outreach leadership team. And his story is, well, complex doesn't even begin to cover it.
No. It's raw. It is uncomfortable at times, but ultimately it's a profoundly redemptive story.
It really is. And to set the stage, this whole deep dive is based on his memoir, specifically a piece he's titled From Pit to Sanctuary.
And I think to really get why we're doing this, why we're spending this time unpacking one man's life, we have to talk about the heart behind it all.
The CA Jail Outreach heart.
Exactly.
What does that actually mean to you? Because heart, it can be a buzzword. It can feel a little corporate.
It can be, for sure.
Yeah.
But here, at its core, the CA Jail Outreach Heart is a specific dedication to people. It's not just about the system, the concrete, the bars, the court dates.
Right, the machinery of it all.
The machinery, yes. It's a compassionate focus on the human beings caught in that machinery. And specifically, it's about those who have loved ones currently in the jail system.
And that's a group of people that so often gets forgotten. We focus on the person incarcerated, but we rarely think about the mother or the brother or the child who's, waiting by the phone.
The ripple effect.
It's a huge ripple effect. That is such a heavy burden for a family to carry.
It's an immense burden. And so the broader mission here is really about championing hope. It's about second chances. It's standing on the firm belief that no one, and I mean no one, is defined solely by their worst moments.
No one is defined solely by their worst moments. I want to put a pin in that because that is going to be the theme that just keeps coming back today as we unpack JW's writing.
It is.
So let's lay out the roadmap for today. We're going to be walking through this memoir from pit to sanctuary.
And it really is a journey. We're going to navigate through some incredibly heavy themes. The visceral pain of incarceration, the deep, stinging isolation of family estrangement.
And the fragility of life itself. That part really hits hard.
It does, but we aren't just going to, wallow in the tragedy. That's not the point.
Well,
We are heading toward the hard-won victory of reconciliation. And the mission, really, for this deep dive is to explore a very specific concept JW writes about, the discipline of grace.
the discipline of grace.
Yes, specifically, how do you use that discipline to rebuild trust after a major and very public failure?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to talk about grace in a classroom or a therapy session. It's a completely different beast to try and apply it when it's publicly crashed and burned.
And when your whole world knows about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, to understand that, we have to start at the beginning. Let's get into the writer's foundation. Who is J.W.?
Okay, so let's unpack his background because it's not what I expected when I first read it.
Me neither. He was born and raised in Queens, New York City. And what's really interesting is that his background wasn't religious. He didn't grow up in the pews, singing hymns every Sunday.
No, he didn't. And I find his pivot, as he calls it, fascinating. He writes that while he was in college, he became captivated by the Bible. But here's the kicker. He wasn't reading it as a holy book at first.
He was reading it as a historical text.
Exactly, as history.
That's a really unique entry point, though. I think it's probably more common than people realize. You're reading it for the history, the context, maybe analyzing the legal structures of the ancient Near East.
Right, you're approaching it intellectually. But as so often happens with that particular text, the history led to something deeper. You can only wrestle with those words for so long before they start wrestling back.
That's a good way to put it.
And that intellectual curiosity led to his salvation around Easter of 2011.
And from there, he really dove in. He didn't just dip his toe in the water. He went through discipleship in Illinois, which, for those who don't know the term, is basically an intense period of mentorship, of learning the ropes of the faith.
And then on to formal training at a Baptist Bible college in California.
Right, so you have this trajectory. Queens kid, non-religious, historical interest, conversion, formal ministry training. It looks like a straight lineup.
It does. On a resume, it looks perfect. But as we know, life rarely, if ever, moves in a straight line.
Not at all.
And J.W. describes a shift in his narrative. He moved from that training into a season where he was focusing very heavily on political and cultural battles.
Okay, I want to pause here.
Yeah.
Because political and cultural battles is a phrase we hear a lot. But what does that actually do to a person's mindset? When your focus shifts from ministry to culture war, what changes inside?
That's a great question. I think when you focus on cultural battles, you can stop seeing people as souls to be loved and start seeing them as enemies to be defeated.
Right.
The whole mindset shifts from compassion to conquest. It creates this binary world, us versus them, and that is spiritually exhausting.
And it sounds like it feeds the ego, too. You got to be right.
Exactly. You're always on the side of the angels in your own mind. And J.W. admits this led him to a dark mental place. He wasn't just debating ideas anymore. He was in a spiritual valley. The anger, the constant friction, it just wears you down.
And this valley, it culminated in a very specific, very hard reality. Incarceration.
And we're not talking about a weekend in a holding cell or, a slap on the wrist.
No. J.W. was incarcerated from 2020 to 2023. 3 years. And just think about those specific years. That's the pandemic era, a time when the whole world was already shutting down and he was shut down even further.
3 years is a lifetime in that context. And we really need to pause on the emotional reality he describes from that time. He uses 3 specific words: bitterness, humiliation, and pain.
Humiliation is a sticky one.
Yeah.
Bitterness, I get. You're angry at the system, angry at yourself. Pain, obviously. But humiliation, that sticks to your skin.
It does.
It changes how you walk into a room for the rest of your life.
It deconstructs your identity. And for J.W., that humiliation was compounded by the family dynamic. He writes that during this time, this season of testing, his family essentially turned their backs on him.
The isolation of a cell is one thing. You expect the state to lock the door. But the silence from home, I mean, that's another level of prison entirely.
He does note that there were exceptions. His wife, who was his girlfriend at the time, which just speaks volumes about her character, and his aunt. But the broader family, the cousins, the uncles, the people he grew up with in Queens. Silence.
That's a tough, tough place to be. But let's fast forward a bit to the comeback, because he is out now.
He is. J.W. was released in late 2023. He's now a married man, a father, and he has launched this ministry focus called Victory of the Embrace.
I want to mention a specific endorsement here because I think it adds a lot of weight to his story. There's a note from David Avritt.
Yes, the CEO and founder of CA Jail Outreach.
David writes about JW's courage and his transparency. And he acknowledges that using a personal story, especially one with a pit like prison, is valuable for bringing healing to others.
Well, it's risky, isn't it, to put all your dirty laundry out there for the world to see?
It's incredibly risky. But David points out that this transparency is what allows for connection. It connects to this concept of faithfulness making an eternal impact. David is saying that JW isn't hiding his scars. He's using them as a map for other people.
If you hide the scar, you hide the healing.
Yeah, exactly. Which brings us to the first major section of his memoir. And this is where I really want to dig in. He calls it the Joseph Parallel.
This is a powerful archetype to choose. I mean, that's a bold comparison to make.
It is. So for listeners who might be a little rusty on their Sunday school lessons, or maybe never heard them, let's retell the Joseph context from the book of Genesis. Joseph is the different son.
He was the 11th son, born to Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel. He was favored, he had these prophetic dreams, and he was set apart.
And he had the coat, the famous coat of many colors.
And that coat was more than just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol of status. It was a management coat. It basically said, I don't have to work in the fields like you do. I oversee you. You can imagine how well that went over with his 10 older brothers.
Right, so that favor just bred resentment. Deep, simmering resentment.
So much so that his brothers conspired against him. They stripped him of his coat, stripping him of his identity and status, cast him into a pit, and then sold him into slavery.
They sold their own flesh and blood into exile.
I want to stop on the pit for a second, because in the Bible, it's a dry cistern. It's dark. But metaphorically, what is the pit for JW? Because some people listening might say, well, hold on. Joseph was innocent. JW admits he made mistakes. Does that parallel hold up?
That's a fair question, and I think it holds powerfully if we look at the psychology of it. Joseph was in a literal pit, then a slave, then a prisoner in a dungeon for years for a crime he didn't commit. JW calls this the far country.
Think about the sensory experience of incarceration.
Go on.
You are stripped of your name, you become a number, you are stripped of your clothes, you wear a uniform, you are stripped of your agency, you are told when to eat, when to sleep, when to move. It is a systematic stripping away of the self.
Just like Joseph losing his coat.
Exactly. And the silence. Joseph is in Egypt. His father thinks he's dead. His brothers are going on with their lives. He is forgotten.
And JW talks about his own incarceration as being in a far country. He was in his own dungeon, metaphorically and literally. He was exiled from his family, stripped of his status. Whether you were there because you were framed like Joseph or because you failed like JW, the experience of the pit, the darkness, the isolation, the feeling that the world has moved on without you, that's the same.
That's a sobering thought. The why you're there matters legally, but emotionally, the ceiling looks the same from the bottom of the pit.
But then comes the moment of power. In the Bible story, Joseph rises. He interprets dreams for Pharaoh. He manages the famine, and he becomes the second most powerful man in Egypt.
The prime minister, effectively.
And one day, his brothers, the same guys who threw him in that hole, come to Egypt begging for food. They don't recognize him. He looks Egyptian, he's clean-shaven, he's speaking the language, but he recognizes them.
Imagine the adrenaline in that moment, the shock. JW writes about this reunion scenario. When Joseph stood before his brothers, he held all the cards, all the power.
He could have snapped his fingers and had them executed as spies. He could have crushed them. And honestly, if I'm Joseph, I'm thinking about it.
Of course you are. That is the human reaction. You've been dreaming of this moment.
I mean, these guys stole his life. JW points out that from a human perspective, he would have been completely justified. Joseph had the right to call out their dark-heartedness. He could have exposed their self-righteousness.
He could have said, you think you're good men. Let me tell the court what you did to me 20 years ago.
The temptation to vindicate yourself, especially after being so publicly humiliated, must be overwhelming. You want the world to know the truth. You want the scoreboard to be corrected.
It's the ultimate test of character. What do you do when you finally have the upper hand?
And Joseph makes a choice. It wasn't immediate. He tested them a bit to see if they had changed.
Which is wise.
Very wise. But ultimately, instead of vengeance, he chooses reconciliation.
And JW anchors this in Scripture, Genesis 45, verses 14 through 15.
And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept.
I want to visualize that. Fell upon his neck. This isn't a polite, side hug. It's not a formal handshake.
No, it's a collapse. It is the breaking of the dam. Years of holding that posture of authority as an Egyptian ruler, years of holding the pain, it all just breaks.
It is a total release of emotion. He wept so loudly the Egyptians outside the room heard him.
It's the collapse of the barrier. And this is where we apply it directly to JW. He connects this scripture back to his own memoir. He is emerging from the pit of his scandal. He's about to face a family that has been silent for 3 years.
And he has to define his journey. Is he going out for revenge? Is he going out to set the record straight? Is he going to write a tell-all blog post exposing everyone who ignored him?
That's the modern weapon, right? The tell-all.
Exactly, but he doesn't. He defines the journey as the walk from the pit to the sanctuary. And the sanctuary isn't a building. It's the sanctuary of a sacred embrace.
He decides that the destination is peace, not vindication.
That is beautiful, but it is also incredibly hard. That requires a death of the ego.
It does. But before he gets to that embrace, before he gets to the sanctuary, the story takes a very somber turn. We move into section 2, the shadow of the conqueror.
This is where real life just hits hard. You're going to have all the theology in the world. You can have your whole journey mapped out, but then death knocks on the door. JW writes about the passing of his uncle.
This was recent in the narrative. His uncle passed away from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the way JW describes him, well, we need to paint this picture for you. He sounds like a powerhouse of a man.
He does. Mid-60s, a retired educator. JW describes him as having a fair spirit.
Fair spirit. I like that. It's to just someone who is balanced, maybe a bit stoic, but just...
Someone who plays by the rules, someone reliable, and physically, he was a triathlete. We aren't talking about a guy who just watched sports on the weekend. He was a man who pushed his physical limits. Swimming, biking, running, his body was a machine.
So you have this image of strength, of endurance, a man who essentially conquered his own body through discipline. And then the visual contrast. JW goes to the funeral and he sees his uncle in the casket.
And the shock is just palpable in the writing. He sees this man who was once robust, athletic, bronzed from the sun, now reduced to being bald, thin, and withered.
It's the visual evidence of the fight with cancer. It strips everything away.
It does. And let's explore the psychological impact here. JW calls the body a husk.
Husk. That is a brutal word. It's not shell. It's not remains.
Yeah.
A husk is what's left after the grain, the valuable part, is gone. It implies something discarded.
It implies that the essence is gone, the life, the spark, the soul that has departed. What remains is just the biological packaging. But it also highlights this deep dive concept he writes about, the vapor of life.
Okay, explain that concept for us, using the uncle as the primary example, because vapor can sound a bit abstract.
Well, think about how we live our lives. We often live as if our physical strength is our security. We invest in our bodies, our careers, our status. The uncle was a triathlete. He was the very picture of health and strength. If anyone was safe from physical decay, it should have been him. But death is the great leveler. It conquers physical strength regardless of how many triathlons you've run.
It's the realization that you can run marathons, you can eat kale, you can be disciplined beyond belief, but you cannot outrun mortality.
Exactly. And the lesson JW draws from seeing his uncle this way is that our physical strength, our life here, is temporary. It's a vapor. Imagine your breath on a cold window. It's there for a second, you can see it, it has shape, and then it just evaporates into nothing.
That sounds incredibly depressing, honestly. If we're just vapor, what's the point of it all?
It can be depressing or it can be clarifying. I think for JW, it was clarifying. If the body is just a husk that fades, then investing 100% of your energy into the temporary is a bad investment strategy.
Right.
He realizes we must build something that lasts. We have to shift our focus to eternal legacies of service and faith.
And he backed this up with scripture, doesn't he?
He does. James 4, verse 14. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away.
A vapor. It really puts all our petty grievances and arguments into perspective, doesn't it? When you realize how short the time is, holding on to anger seems like such a waste of that vapor.
That is the key. When you stand next to a casket, your grudge against your cousin for not writing you a letter feels incredibly small. Death clarifies life.
That's a perfect transition into section 3, the silence of the sifting.
Yeah.
Because even with that eternal perspective, the pain of the past is real. You can't just philosophize that pain away.
No, you can't. And JW recounts a specific memory with this uncle.
Forest Park, 10 years prior, they were jogging in the snow.
I can picture that. The cold air in your lungs, the crunch of the snow under your sneakers, that shared effort. JW calls it a solid cadence.
That's such a great metaphor for connection. When you run with someone, you fall into a rhythm, you breathe together, you move together. It was a connection before the fall. They were in sync.
But then the chasm.
A 6-year gap. JW writes that he hadn't seen his uncle in 6 years. And that gap wasn't just, geographical distance. It was caused by what he calls the legal scandal and his incarceration.
He also mentions that his father, and his brother were already what he calls quasi-outcasts in the family. They were already a little bit on the fringe.
Maybe they were the religious ones or just had different politics. You know how families are.
Right, there was already some distance, but the scandal, he says it blew that differentness wide open. It turned a small crack into a Grand Canyon.
And this brings us to the pain of silence. He's in prison for 3 years. Does he get letters? Because in the movies, people in prison always get a big stack of mail.
He writes, and this is a direct quote, "Not one cousin bothered to write a letter or send a card."
Ouch. I have to be the skeptic here for a second. Not one. Out of the whole family, that feels almost coordinated, like a boycott.
It might have been, or it might have been the bystander effect, someone else will write. Or maybe they just didn't know what to say. But the result for JW was the same. Absolute silence.
And this is where we need to analyze what you call the filter of adversity.
Yeah, let's break that down.
Think of a sieve. You pour everything into it. Sand, gravel, rocks. The fine sand falls right through, but the big, solid rocks stay. Adversity acts like that sieve for your relationships.
I like that.
When things are going well, when you're successful, when you're Joseph with the coat, everyone is your friend. Everyone is family.
But when you hit the pit,
That's when the sifting happens. You see the true nature of the relationships. The people who are there for the benefit of you fall through the cracks. The people who are there for you, the rocks, they stay.
it filters out all the fair weather fans.
Exactly. And there's a unique suffering in silence. If someone yells at you, at least they're acknowledging you exist. Active conflict is engaging. You can yell back. But silence. Silence is a void. It tells you, you are non-existent to us. You don't matter.
That is so heavy. It completely invalidates your humanity. So how do you handle that? What is the spiritual pivot? Because if you're relying on people, you're going to be crushed by that.
The pivot has to be relying on God's unchanging love when human love fails. When the mailbox is empty day after day, you have to find fullness somewhere else. You have to realize that your worth isn't determined by your cousin's Christmas card list.
And the scripture for this is Proverbs 17, verse 17.
A friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity.
And it's such an interesting verse here because it highlights exactly what was missing. His brothers, his cousins, were not there for the adversity.
The irony is sharp. The verse says, a brother is born for this very moment, yet his brothers vacated the premises.
Which sets up the internal conflict perfectly for the next section, section 4, the decision for grace.
Okay, so picture this. JW is out of prison. He's driving to the funeral. He knows these are the people who haven't written to him in 3 years. He's putting on his suit, tying his tie, and he admits he had a fantasy about making a scene.
And who wouldn't? Be honest.
Oh, 100%. I'd be rehearsing the speech in the car. Oh, now you want to see me now that I'm free and doing well. The human desire for vindication is so powerful.
You want to walk in and say, where were you? You want to call out the hypocrisy.
He says he wanted to call out the family for their silence. He wanted to be the judge.
And that's the natural man talking. That's the reaction of pain. It's the fight response to trauma. But JW talks about putting on the new man.
This brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. Let's really dig into this. The discipline of grace.
Yes.
And specifically how this discipline applies to rebuilding trust after a public failure. Why do you call it a discipline?
Because it is not a feeling. I cannot stress this enough. We have this romantic idea that forgiveness is this warm wave that just washes over you one day. JW emphasizes that it is not. If he waited until he felt like hugging his cousins, he might be waiting until his own funeral.
So it's an action. It's a choice. It's a manual override of your feelings.
Exactly. It is a discipline you enact. Think of it like a soldier putting on gear before battle. You force your behavior to align with your values, not your emotions. You choose to act with grace even when your stomach is in knots and you feel nothing but anger.
It's cognitive dissonance, almost. You act with kindness while feeling hurt, in the hopes that eventually the feelings will catch up to the action.
And a huge part of that discipline is reframing the narrative. JW writes that he realized something crucial about his family's perspective on the drive to the funeral.
This shows incredible maturity. He realized that to his family, he might have appeared untouchable, confusing, or scary.
Let's unpack that. They see the headlines. They know he's in prison. They don't know the day-to-day reality of his transformation. They might be thinking, is he dangerous now? Has he changed for the worse? Is he bitter?
Right. It's not always malice. Sometimes it's just fear or confusion. They don't have the script for the situation. They don't know how to engage.
Exactly. And recognizing their fear allows you to extend grace. You realize they aren't necessarily evil, they're just awkward and afraid. And that changes everything.
He wasn't doing this alone, though. He had a support system with him.
That is a crucial point. He had his wife and his baby daughter, and he calls their presence proof of the triumphant comeback.
Walking into that church with a family of his own, that sends a powerful nonverbal message. It says, I am not destroyed. I am rebuilding. I have a future.
It's visual proof of the scripture he stands on, 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17.
Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new.
He had to walk in as that new creature, not as the inmate, not as the scandal, as a new creature. He had to believe that about himself before he could ever expect them to believe it.
And that mindset leads us directly to section 5, the sacred moment and the whisper.
The scene is set. The funeral mass, it's majestic, it's powerful, the incense, the liturgy. And then comes the moment at the entrance of the church, the receiving line.
This is the Joseph moment. This is the moment where he could have snubbed them. He could have just given a cold nod and walked past.
But he doesn't. JW gives each cousin an embrace. One by one, he initiates.
He writes about his mindset in that moment. He says he was, quote, accepting that they may never be close friends, but offering love in that sacred moment regardless.
That is the discipline of grace in action. It's managing your expectations. He isn't demanding that everything goes back to normal instantly. He isn't saying, we're best buddies again. He is simply offering love in the present moment. He is clearing the air.
And then the climax of the entire story. It happens at the feast afterward, the repast.
This is where the tension finally breaks. And he identifies a specific cousin.
Her background is really important here. Her husband is a police officer.
Right, so you can imagine the dynamic. She probably didn't take JW's legal drama very well. Her world is law and order. He was on the other side of that. There's a natural ideological divide there. She represents the law. He represents the offender.
But they have an interaction. She leans in.
And she whispers, I'm very proud of you.
Wow, from that specific cousin, I'm very proud of you.
Why is that whisper so important? Why not shout it across the room for everyone to hear?
Well, thinking about it, a shout is for the room. A shout is performative. A whisper is for the soul. It's intimate. It's safe. It's just for him.
Exactly. A whisper is sometimes more powerful than a shout. It cuts through all the noise. And I think this is a model for seeking forgiveness from your critics.
How so?
You don't win critics over by shouting at them. You don't win them over by debating them on social media. You win them over with quiet consistency and presence. JW showed up. He was humble. He was present. He hugged them first. And eventually, that quiet discipline yielded a quiet acknowledgement.
She acknowledged that he was a new man. She saw the change. She saw that he wasn't the scary headline. He was just her cousin again.
And the result of that whisper. He drove home satisfied. Peace was the final destination.
That is such a powerful ending to the narrative. It wasn't a ticker tape parade or a public apology. It was just peace. But we aren't done yet. We need to synthesize all of this. Let's look at section 6, closing truths.
Let's review the key takeaways JW lists at the end. These are the nuggets of gold from all that sifted dirt.
Okay, the first one, the victory of restraint.
Like Joseph, the greatest power you have is the power not to retaliate when you have the chance. It takes more strength to hold back than to strike. Any weak person can lash out. A strong person restrains themselves.
Second takeaway, the power of presence.
Reconciliation doesn't always need a long speech. You don't need a PowerPoint presentation on why you've changed. You don't need to explain your side of the story. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just show up. Show up with your family. Show up with the spirit of grace. Let your new life do the talking.
Third, victory in the whisper.
We just talked about this, but it's so important. Small acknowledgments are evidence that God is working in the wreckage. Don't despise the small victories. A whisper is a victory. A nod is a victory. Don't wait for the brass band to celebrate.
Fourth, peace is the destination.
The goal isn't necessarily to be best friends with everyone again. You might never jog in the snow with them again, and that's okay. The goal is walking in the spirit and driving home satisfied. If you have peace, you have won the war.
And finally, the core theme of the whole deep dive, the discipline of grace.
Intentionally putting on grace rather than waiting for the feeling to arrive. You put it on like a garment every morning. You choose it. You wake up and you say, today, I choose grace.
JW closes his insights with a final scripture, Colossians 4, verse 6.
Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer every man.
Seasoned with salt. Salt preserves. Salt adds flavor. But salt also stings a little if there's an open wound, right? There's a truth to it.
It does. It purifies. It implies that our words should make things better, not worse. They should preserve the relationship, not let it rot.
J.W. signs off this memoir with a powerful line. Keep writing, keep growing. This is the ministry of the pen. I'm J.W. And then he adds a simple note. I consider that day a victory.
It was a victory of the spirit over the flesh, a victory of the sanctuary over the pit.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, where do we go from here? This has been a lot to process.
It has, but we don't want to just leave this as an interesting story. We want to invite you, the listener, to ignite your journey.
To deepen your own growth journey of hope.
Exactly. If this story resonated with you, if you're navigating your own pit, or if you're the family member standing on the edge of one, we want to connect with you.
We have a call to action for you. Visit the website. It is linked right there in the description. Just tap the blue highlighted text.
On the site, you can connect with ways to share this message and find support specifically for families in the jail system. And I want to mention something very specific. The ability to request a chaplain for an incarcerated loved one nationally.
That is a huge offering. You don't have to navigate the system alone. There are people ready to walk into that facility and bring hope.
You don't. And speaking of connection, the team is ready to help in other ways, too.
Absolutely. The CA Jail Outreach team is ready to assist with prayer. Maybe you're looking to launch a nonprofit and use your own story for good. Maybe you just need a fresh start. We are here.
And for those who want to read the full story, because we've done our best, but we've really just scratched the surface today, where can they find it?
A quick navigation tip for you. The full memoir is available under the Leadership Memoir tab on the website's menu bar. Go check it out. It is absolutely worth the read.
It absolutely is.
Before we go, we need to say a couple of thank yous.
We do. Thank you to CA Jail Outreach for hosting this deep dive and for their unwavering dedication to hope and truth.
And a specific moment of gratitude and prayer for JW. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to show us the map out of the pit.
It takes so much courage to share that story. We are praying for you, JW.
We are. And to you, our listeners, thank you for being part of this growth journey with us.
Until the trumpet blows, wishing you a fantastic day.
Now that you have heard the wisdom shared in this podcast, you can find the full written version on our website. The link is provided in the description box below. To stay connected and follow our journey, please visit our website for all our social media links. We also invite you to visit the author page for our CEO and founder. There, you can explore the complete collection of Growth Journey books available on Amazon. Every purchase you make, whether in paperback or Kindle format, directly fuels our mission. Your support allows us to send these same books to inmates and their families free of charge. Additionally, these contributions help us provide gift cards to our dedicated volunteers as a token of appreciation for their vital service in our outreach programs. I'd like to close with the words our CEO and founder, David, often shares with us. Helping is ordinary, adding ice makes it extraordinary. There are leaders, and then there are leaders who serve. But among the best are those who always remember to add ice. God bless. Until next time.